But welcome to the JB Media Institute Digital Drop-In for October. This is Sarah, your lead instructor, and I'm here with Justin.
Hey Sarah, hey everyone, welcome.
So today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, and this is going to be a little different than our previous digital drop-ins. What we're going to talk about today is what you don't know about SEO is hurting you. And really, I have put together some slides, so you will get a presentation that you can review and dig into later. But a lot of what I really wanted to do today was have a conversation with Justin to kind of share sort of our vision of where search engine optimization is going. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what inspired me to want to have this conversation and to invite everyone to it in just a moment when I sort of talk about my background. But I want to give Justin a chance just to share, because really Justin and I sort of met and got to know each other based on SEO being the topic from the very beginning. And so I wanted Justin just to share a little bit about how he got into search engine optimization, and also just, I know we're going to talk about the changes in more detail, but kind of how do you feel about SEO, the industry, where it's going, where it's been?
Yeah, so it's interesting because simultaneously I'm between meetings and stuff today. I'm working on a big SEO project, so it's really fresh in my mind, like the challenges of current SEO. And briefly, I'm working on I was just looking at a page before the call that was recently rebranded from the topic of TV audiences, which is one of the main keywords for this client, and a more branded keyword called amplify, which is like the name of their product, which allows you to reach very targeted TV audiences. So the page, by virtue of renaming it and renaming the headers, is less optimized for TV audiences than it was before. And I made an argument with the client that they should move it back or keep it the way it was, and they were like, no, we decided the brand is more important. So now we have to optimize it using the new URL, the new name, the new title, to incorporate more of the keywords that the page used to have when it was ranking, I think, on page 2 or the bottom of page 1 for the main keyword. And so it's slipping, and we're being hired as part of a much larger project to work on this page. But to answer your question, I have a long background in SEO, and it really started when I was in college studying computer science. And during that time, my father started a company that was in the wellness travel business, mostly the vegan travel business. And I started an Asheville-based tourism and online directory website. And right after I graduated from college, I started working for an industrial manufacturing business in Asheville. And all three of those projects, my father's business, my own business, and this one other client, became my testing ground and area to practice SEO. And I think you and I met probably about 2 to 3 years after I graduated from college, mostly through the lens of me working on my Asheville website, and you writing articles about Asheville for some of your clients, and seeing the intersection of those two things. But I started seeing my first results in SEO from my father's business, which I started optimizing about the time I graduated from college, and through my first big, basically I started out as a part-time employee as a marketing person, a website marketing and web development employee for this manufacturing business. And both of those businesses, my father's and the manufacturing business, did really well with SEO. And in both cases, especially for the client, the manufacturing business, I hired SEO help. I actually hired some SEO help for my own website. And also at the same time, right when I was graduating from college, I had a class that was a partner. It was my professor partnered with a woman out in the Asheville business community to do a project together, and she was something of an SEO expert. So she was one of my first mentors. Her name is Gina Drew, and she does legal marketing here, and I was helping her with some SEO for her legal clients. Had a couple successes there. And then my father's business partner, who was running the holistic health travel business, he had a friend in Florida who had used to do the SEO for realestate.com, and I got to pick his brain. Simultaneously, I was reading blogs and transcriptions from major conferences like the SES conference and these big search engine conferences I couldn't afford to fly to and buy a $2,000 ticket to attend, but fortunately people were live blogging and transcribing the Q&A sessions with major influencers, like people who work for Google. And I was also reading the blogs of Matt Cutts, who used to work for Google, who was their search spam director, and he used to write a lot of content about changes in the search engines, and you used to follow him closely as well before we met. So that was sort of the history, and then it morphed into starting the agency in 2011, hiring you, and then hiring Leah Quintal to help with SEO. And over several years, I spent less time studying, and Leah took over in that department, and you kept doing the training and building out the school we have. And so you two stayed on top of it a little bit more than I have over the last 3 or 4 years. But I've been, in weekly meetings with both you and her until she left the company about 6 months ago, to learn from what you guys are studying, and to also be involved in producing content for the weekly calls, and meeting with Leah every week to go over strategy and direction and the services we offered and how to price them and how to stay competitive. So I've been pretty close up to it, but I was really much more into it, I think, up through about 2012 than I have been the last, I'd say 2004 to 2012, I was spending more energy learning than I have in the last 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I think one of the awesome things is, like you were describing, you've been through all these iterations of SEO, and that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation today, because, one of the things that inspired me to bring up this topic is I recently was at WordCamp Asheville, which is a WordPress conference here in town, and I taught an SEO class there, which I was really excited about. And I got to meet 2 other really great search engine optimization experts and sit with them and talk about things. And I sat through their classes. One of them is local, Rich Owings, who we work with quite a bit on local SEO. But, one of the things that I really found as we were all talking is that there needs to be this real big shift in the way we perceive search engine optimization. So especially with the majority of the students that I work with who are marketing professionals or small business owners, most of those people are struggling not because they don't have the opportunity to achieve some sort of success on the search engines, because I do think the opportunity is still there, but because their knowledge of the way that search engine optimization kind of has evolved is just lacking. So they're not aware of a lot of the changes and the shifts that have happened in our industry, and so they're thinking about things from 10 years ago, or reading things even that kind of promote this sort of what I would call an antiquated perspective. And so one of the things that really, kind of stuck out to me while I was at WordCamp Asheville in August was there's a lot of us in the search engine industry who've been there a long time. We've had to spend a lot of time collaborating to keep up with things because it's changing all the time. As Justin described, a lot of times you accomplish things in the search engine optimization world by trying them and testing them and seeing what happens. And there really is no sort of one-size-fits-all formula that just works for everybody. So, like I said, there's a lot of kind of misconceptions that go on in the industry. And, my background in search engine optimization is different than Justin's because I started out as a writer. So I really had no technical background. I was actually working in corporate healthcare, and I was working with a healthcare consultant. I was writing, for those of you who remember back to when HIPAA became a thing in the healthcare world, as far as the compliance laws, I was writing HIPAA manuals, and I was writing all sorts of different kind of healthcare consulting content. And, my boss at the time, she would get these big consulting gigs throughout the Southeast. She would come up with all the data, and then I would actually write the sort of folders that we were presenting as part of the consultation. So, when I basically got laid off from my corporate job, I had met another writer from Virginia, and we started talking about how we could start a company that focused on search engine optimization. So I see somebody here is having trouble hearing at this time. Is there anybody else having an issue? Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. Just wanted to make sure we had lost somebody. So, I think it's interesting that, Justin came into search engine optimization with a computer science background and more of a web development kind of background. I came into search engine optimization from a writing background and a, kind of just communications background. And so essentially, I think it's interesting that search engine optimization attracted this very wide range of different types of professionals. And yeah, Kristen, I see your comment. You'd love more information about how to get started in writing as an entry-level marketer. Maybe we can talk about that at the end once we go through some of our actual SEO content, because I think that's a little bit off topic for our call today. But I'm glad to share any information about how I got started, and maybe we can connect after the call too to talk a little bit more about it. But like I said, I think, in SEO, what we've got going on right now is a lot of different people who've become leaders in the industry. Our backgrounds are really diverse. The only way that you really have success with search engines is when you test things, you try them, and you see if they work for you. There's no one-size-fits-all formula. And it's really important that we keep sharing ideas and that we all sort of really help each other, I think, shift our mindset into kind of this new world of SEO that is happening. So yeah, and no problem, Kristen, because I would love to share, how I went from being in writing to being in a more technical world. It was a really kind of long journey. It's something I don't get to talk about very much. So again, what I want to talk about first is shifting your mindset for the future of what search engines are doing for people, how they have become integrated into our lives. So there's a few SEO myths I want to bust right up front that I think came up over the last couple months that I've been talking to people about this. So first of all, actual rankings are the most important metric to measure SEO success. I believe that's false. I think that the way that the algorithm's rankings have changed mean that rankings still matter. You still want to chart those and keep track of them, but there's all these other pieces of data, and I have a slide about that we'll talk about. All these other pieces of data that really matter, that prove whether or not you are giving the search engines what they need. SEO is a service that can be done once. I think that is a big falsehood. So there's no SEOing of your site. There's no endpoint to search engine optimization. You don't get to do it and then kind of feel like you accomplished your goal or ran the race and now you're done. It is sort of an ever-evolving thing that you have to keep track of, that you have to pay attention to. As Justin mentioned, he's working with a client right now who made some changes, and they're seeing their page rankings slip a little bit, and they're not as high as they were before. That is a very common thing to see happen as the months and years go by. So SEO is more of a campaign mindset. It's more of a long game. It's something that you invest in on a regular basis. And I think the last thing that I'm going to hopefully kind of clarify today is that search engine optimization, it's not a singular service that a professional provides. So in the past, especially when I think Justin and I started out in this industry, it was easy to say, I'm going to hire somebody to do SEO. I think that is just really oversimplified in our market today. And based on how the algorithms work, the truth is you can't just hire somebody to do SEO, because search engine optimization is now the process of figuring out where you have the opportunities to grow your online authority. And there's different opportunities depending on what industry you're in, what type of business you are, what kind of website you have, what kind of conversions you're trying to generate. So to me, search engine optimization went from being this sort of singular service area to being this conglomeration of different things that has to happen in order to build an online presence that's truly authoritative. And this is really what I talked about with some of my colleagues at WordCamp Asheville, was this is the mindset shift that we all have to do well. So there's a few things about SEO that I want to just highlight. And again, you can dig deeper into these, but I think there are key things that over the last 5 years have really become important in the industry, and there's something unique and different that I don't think everybody's talking about. So the first thing is web accessibility. unless you're kind of into the web design development field, you probably haven't talked that much about this. Or if you were running a website that is a government entity, something for a higher education, then you would, and I see this question, yes, there will be a recording of this webinar, and we will email it to everybody by tomorrow morning. But so web accessibility, unless you're a very large website that's serving the public, essentially you probably haven't had this conversation too much. But what web accessibility really is about is making the internet and all of the websites on the internet available to people with disabilities, regardless of the type of disability they have. So whether they're using screen readers or they're using different tools in order to access the web because, they have a dexterity issue, they can't use a keyboard or a mouse, whether they're having audio things read to them, all of that different stuff is considered part of making the web in general more accessible. And so a lot of people don't understand that search engine optimization and web accessibility are linked, and that I actually consider web accessibility to be one of the origins of SEO. So a lot of the tactics that we had available to us, especially early on in my career, a lot of those were centered around using things that were actually created on search engines for web accessibility. So they have a relationship, these two things. The most important sort of thing that they both share is this desire to get relevant content to people. So we see that search engine optimization and web accessibility are coming together. People are working on both sides of the aisle to sort of bring these two topics together more. And this means that you have to be more thoughtful, not just about how usable your website is in general for people, but whether or not it's truly accessible. And sometimes that can affect everything from colors to layout to alt tags to headings. All these different things that we think of as sort of SEO areas to format a website are also related to this piece. So we have to start digging into web accessibility and what it means and make sure that it becomes part of the conversation. The other thing that came up in SEO that I think definitely changed the algorithms over the last decade is what we call semantic search. And, semantic search really has to do with the algorithms becoming smart enough to understand that certain types of phrases and language are synonymous with each other, that there are different ways that people have conversational usages of words and phrases. And so we wanted to really help the algorithms themselves better understand the way people were typing things in. So all of the algorithms out there made a big leap when semantic search became sort of the standard, right? So a lot of this had to do with getting the algorithms to better understand the intent of people. So it meant, understanding, like I said, that certain things are related to other things, understanding different slang ways of saying stuff. All of this stuff is about improving the algorithm's understanding of contextual meaning, because human beings, we don't talk necessarily in all grammatically correct rules, right? We have a lot of other things that affect our language and our style of conversation. Also, we saw that as semantic search kind of started to become the standard, machine learning, which is basically artificial intelligence, started to infiltrate all the algorithms. Google specifically is called rank brain. And this just comes down to the fact that now the algorithms, we don't have to really teach them to do anything. They learn on their own independent of us. So basically the algorithms are capable of tracking all this behavior of all these different people and then crunching all that data to sort of make decisions and adjustments to what is ranking. And this allows the algorithms, I think, to really follow trends. So when you see news trends happening and you watch how the Google algorithm responds to the different things that are happening in real time in the world, a lot of that is made possible by things like rank brain, because the algorithm can learn, in the last 24 hours, everybody started listening to this particular issue. We're going to start showing up more results around this particular topic. And essentially this also allows when people type in a phrase or a group of words that the algorithm has never seen before, they can kind of relate it to things that they've already seen. So each sort of AI is able to say, I've never seen this exact phrase before, but I think it's related to this other phrase or these other phrases that I've seen, so I'm going to produce results similar, and then see if people click on it, and if they do click on it, then I produce the right thing. So we're at this point where I think this has really altered kind of how the algorithms work compared to, let's say, 2004 when I first kicked off my career. It's just very different in how the algorithms work. And Kristen, I see your comment. Is this comparable to Google Analytics? This is actually much more advanced than Google Analytics. Google Analytics is really just the tracking of your website and understanding where the traffic's coming from. And once they're on your website, where are they spending their time? Artificial intelligence is really more about, like I said, the actual machine learning itself is kind of operating on its own.
I can give a good example, I think.
Yeah, please, go for it.
So here's a good example of how artificial intelligence works in search engines, and to compare it to Google Analytics. Google Analytics is software that tracks how people move through your website. It doesn't come to any conclusions. It doesn't think at all. It doesn't say you should optimize this page because you have a lot of traffic on it, but it's not converting. You have to do that yourself. You have to come to those conclusions yourself. You have to install, in some cases, more advanced software like heat mapping, which you're going to get to later, or other things that can actually help you come to informed decisions. Analytics is just raw data displayed in graphs, forms, charts, things you can filter so you can get to the data you want. RankBrain is an example of trying to learn from search patterns to give people better results. So for example, if 1,000 people search for, let's say they search for Super Bowl commercials, and they don't click on anything because they don't like what they see, and then they search for Budweiser commercial Super Bowl. What that tells Google is that people who search for Super Bowl commercials are actually looking for the Budweiser commercial. Yeah. And then next, after they have enough data to say that like 80% of people who are looking for this actually want something else, the semantic search translates the search that they search for what they really want. And so they'll deliver the Budweiser ad at the top in like a Play Now YouTube video format, and then some blog posts with like the top Super Bowl ads or examples of other ads or data about how much Super Bowl advertising costs and other educational resources that maybe 5% or 2% of people are actually looking for, but they can figure out through what you search for next or which result you click on. Like if everyone clicks on the fourth result because it's what they were looking for, later that becomes the first result.
Yeah.
That is what the RankBrain is.
Yeah.
The RankBrain is a set of different formulas and learning algorithms that combined has been patented by Google so that other people can't steal the technology and try to use it on other search engines so that their search engine remains better than anyone else's.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of Google. That's their entire business model, is to be the best search engine, to hire the best programmers, to program programs that can also learn on their own. And that's what artificial intelligence is. Artificial intelligence is when a computer program potentially like writes code or other programs to get smarter over time.
Yeah.
Take the human element out of it over time.
Yeah. No, thank you, because that really, Kristen was just saying that really helped. No, that was a great example, Justin. Because, sometimes it's hard to imagine that the algorithm is doing that much at this point in the game, but it really is really understanding things at that minutia level and adjusting stuff.
And originally, PageRank algorithm, after like 5 or 6 years, it was their previous ranking algorithm. Every year they would add like 10 new rules. And so they were adding new rules, but the number of rules were set in stone.
Yeah.
So you could actually have someone theoretically debate which rules inside of the algorithm were more important and which ones you should focus on with your SEO, like internal linking versus headers versus the value of bolding text versus how many sites you link to or where your site is on a server compared to other sites that that link to you. All those things were rules. And Google PageRank had like 300 or more different rules, and the rules were formulas. Yeah. But now there's no one who can tell you what the rules are.
Yeah.
Because the rules are rewriting themselves, basically.
Yeah.
So there's no person at Google who knows exactly what the filters are doing. They're just like watching the results and then maybe writing like correctional formulas or like trim tab style formulas to be like, okay, this is like this algorithm that currently is like overvaluing something like social media buzz or what the media is saying about content or other things.
Yeah.
Or it's actually like taking into consideration a tactic that they think is bad, like faking links. Like if they can determine that the new strategy of link building that's no longer was previously unknown is influencing the search engines, they might write a rule and say this type of link, these type of links are actually negative instead of positive.
Yeah.
And then they just insert that code into the AI, and AI absorbs it and says, okay, now I know how to interpret this type of data and to demote rather than promote pages that use this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's where, like I said, the biggest mindset shift that we have to make is, like you said, that there's no more formulas. There's no more rule set. A lot of people when I'm teaching SEO want to know sort of what is the answer for what I need to do. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, that's not the world we live in anymore, right? We're basically trying to produce something that really works for people, and the algorithms are really going to learn and decide on their own if it's working for people or not. There's no way to kind of enhance what you're doing. So a lot of reason behind all of these changes is because the algorithms were already really strong, the ones that were out there, they were doing well, but the one place that they needed to grow was in understanding the conversational level of human beings. So when Google started to realize they were a verb, and people say, I Google things to get an answer, they started, again, like Justin said, want to position themselves really as the number one knowledge base for people to go to for different things. And so in order to do that, they needed to make this shift, I think, just for the sake of actually making it work, into more of the artificial intelligence that can follow these trends so easily and quickly that people are executing online. And so, since the beginning, they've really wanted to have an algorithm that really understood natural conversation, and a huge component was them really kind of moving into semantic search and then rank brain. And I think really we see now anything algorithmically based is doing the same thing. This applies to lots of social media and lots of other things. So Sean, I see your question. In your previous career, you would try to use keywords that weren't necessarily industry specific, but that we thought the average person might use for your services. Is that kind of practice potentially detrimental to SEO efforts these days?
I don't think necessarily it's detrimental unless you're, the only way it could be detrimental is if you're trying to go after things that are just way too generic, because generic words usually equate to highly competitive words. Not always, but being more generic usually means there's more websites about it, maybe more specific websites that focus only on that subject, or that you're competing with like Wikipedia and Amazon and or other major national companies, because you haven't narrowed down on something that you're really the best at, or that's related to like regional keywords, local keywords, things that make you stand out.
Yeah, and I would say too that I think it's a good idea sometimes to think about what the average person would type in, because many companies will sometimes optimize for lingo that people in the industry know, but not necessarily their customers. So I think that's actually an important thing to think about when you're doing your keyword research per se. But I have to agree with Justin. You want to be careful that you don't go too generic. Not only will it create some of the issues that Justin's talking about with competition, but I think sometimes when you go after broad terms, the conversion rate goes down. So you're attracting people for this very broad topic that doesn't really mean that they want what you have to offer. So you might even get that traffic, but yet they don't become customers, or they don't become leads because they weren't as well qualified. So
it also can dilute your website's authority on like what percentage of the website is focused on your main keywords. So if you have a site that's really broad, it's about too many different things that Google doesn't see through their AI as being related, then Google might be like, okay, this site is just like a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
And for this keyword, I'm not interested in showing someone a hodgepodge. I'm interested in showing them the best website about that subject. You are not that.
Yeah.
And to be the best about a bunch of generic topics is impossible for a small business. It's impossible for most businesses. Even the biggest businesses, Huffington Post, for example, or Forbes, they don't talk about everything.
Yeah.
They talk about a lot of things because they have hundreds of thousands of articles a day or a week that go on the website. You can't compete with that.
Yeah. So actually, though, to lead into the next section, Sean, I think this kind of actually speaks to the question you just asked, because I think one of the biggest changes we've seen in the search engines overall is that when you're doing your keyword research and you're thinking about your content and the way that you optimize your website, what you really want to focus on is how to connect with people's motivations and intentions. So I often teach in my SEO classes that, there's no trick to getting higher on Google or getting more traffic from Google. If you want to do better on Google, then have an awesome website and serve people exactly what they need and serve them something of value. And so a big part of that has to do with understanding the search intent of people and then choosing keyword phrases that actually match that intent. So one of the things I talk about a lot with students is that there's sort of three basic buckets of intent that we see out there: informational, or sometimes what we call investigative, navigational, and transactional. And, this has to do with thinking about your website and the purpose of the pages of your website. Some of those pages may be there just to educate people, give them information that they need, help them make a decision by providing video content or written content or testimonials or whatever it is that would help them, get educated before they made a decision. That's usually informational or investigative intent. Sometimes you have, like Justin was describing when we first started the call with a client, where they have a brand that they really want people to know about and they want people to be searching for that brand. That's what we call navigational intent. That's when I'm looking for a specific product, a specific company, a specific thing that I know I can just search for on Google by name. And then transactional intent is when we move into people who maybe have already been through the informational and investigative phase and now they're ready to actually make a purchase. So sometimes if you think about e-commerce websites, you'll have a product page that's really focused on the purchase, right? Because if people have already investigated the products, but they know they want to buy this product right now, we want them to be able to hit the page and hit an add to cart or a buy now button and immediately complete the process. So we see e-commerce sites now diversifying into, they may have a shopping cart with all of their product pages and their product categories, but then they may also have sections of the website that have informational or educational information about the products. And that's because some people they're trying to attract are in the informational investigative stage, and some people that they want to attract are in that transactional phase. So this relates directly to the keywords that you choose, because again, if I'm ready to make a purchase, I might actually put words like buy into the search phrase that I put into Google, right? So most of us know we can go to Google and search for something we want to buy and actually look at products directly on Google. If I'm investigating something or looking to be educated with certain information, I might be typing in phrases like how to or what is or, best, whatever, right? So I might actually put these types of, questions into the search engine or longer phrases into the search engine so that I can get the details that I need to actually make a decision. So understanding this, I think, is a really key thing. When you're doing your keyword research, you're thinking about optimizing pages. In my mind, you want to think about which, sort of place does that page fit into? Which phase of intent do you think it's serving? Or is it serving two different types of intent? And then when you do your keyword research, really identifying things that match that intent. To me, there's a big relationship between understanding the purpose of the page of your website that you want to be showing up in Google and really crafting the content and the layout and everything to serve that purpose. Because again, what Google's looking for, especially, is the best page for the phrase that was put in. Mm-hmm. They want to give the person exactly what they want. So when you have, going back to Justin's comment about generic stuff, when you have pages that are too broad and general, the intent and the purpose aren't clear. And that sometimes really affects how high that page can show and whether or not it can get good traffic. And this all basically relates to essentially usability at the end of the day. So we see that website usability is a huge piece of the puzzle now with search engine optimization. It's not good enough just to have a website with a lot of content that's optimized. You really need a website that people want to be on. And so, there's different things that Google's paying attention to. One thing is they're really looking at the page load time. So I don't think enough people are spending time testing their website pages and making sure that they're loading quickly. You can see Google's done a bunch of tests, especially on mobile, to show that once you get above 3 seconds, you're seeing a huge increase in whether or not people will bounce off the page. So especially on mobile devices, if you know that your audience is, coming to your website 50% of the time through a mobile device, then testing the speed of your website and testing individual pages is really key. Especially if you say, here's some pages that are already getting good organic traffic, I want them to get more. One of the things I would do is test the page speed and see how fast you're loading. Google doesn't just rank your website, it ranks every page. Every page has the potential to show up somewhere and become a doorway into your website. And so to me, a lot of the pages need to load fast so that people can get to the information they need. In addition, thinking about from a design perspective, what's above the fold or what is going to show in the very first screen people land on is really key. So a lot of times you'll see right now we build websites with strong singular calls to action at the top of the main homepage. And sometimes even internal pages are now designed to have really clear calls to action at the top. That's because we really find a good percentage of people, sometimes like once you get through that first screen, about 75% of the people are gone, depending on which study you're looking at. So that first screen that they hit really, really matters. And so when you're on your laptop, it's like what's showing up in that laptop screen when they first hit the page. If you're on your phone, what shows up in that screen? If you're on a tablet, what shows up in that screen? It's really important to think about that. You don't want stuff to be cluttered. You don't want them to have to scroll too far down to get to some sort of next step. Because in my mind, a lot of times, the first page they hit, they're going to have a very short attention span and judge really quickly if they're in the right place. If you can get them to click to the next page, you've now kind of hooked them in. And so I think this matters a lot as well, especially to Google, because if people are hitting the page and bouncing off, it means they weren't really clear what that next step was. Also avoiding clutter. So really thinking about responsive, mobile friendly, I think is just an absolute key. Everybody's going to be different. I know in the business to business world, we see less people coming from mobile devices, but in the business to consumer world, you're probably seeing a higher percentage of your traffic coming from mobile devices. Just think about how things translate from a bigger screen to a smaller screen. There's a lot of easy ways now for web designers and developers to adjust what's showing on mobile to make it simpler, to highlight the main calls to action so they're the focus on a smaller device. And then when people look at it on a larger device, they get all the many options that you want them to have. But you can see Google, again, did some great studies where, if you look at just the number of pictures on a page on mobile, the more pictures you have, the more you kind of see conversions go down. And the less images you have, you see conversions go up. It's because, again, it's too much to digest on a smaller screen. So people can't digest like tons of photos on a page for clicking through. You might pick just like 3 really great ones that communicate your message, and that might get done what you need done. And it's the same thing again, like if your load times, if you can work on how fast your pages are loading, you're going to see your bounce rates go down. And so that's a key thing to be paying attention to. And like I said, I'm a big fan of really focusing in on, how you can basically, focus in on the pages that are most important. So have a tool whether it's the Google Search Console or whether you're using Google Analytics to look at your top pages of your website or another tool like Ahrefs or Moz. Find out which pages are already getting a lot of the organic traffic and then focus your energy on those. Make sure those are loading fast. Make sure they're not too cluttered. Just maybe do some heat map tracking on those pages so you can understand whether or not people are looking at the right calls to action and things like that. So the other things that I've put in here that are more technical, but I wanted to give people something to dig into later, is understanding canonical pages as well as schema, which are two sort of pieces of the SEO conversation that are becoming more common to have with a broader audience. If you're using Google Search Console for SEO, you have a way to establish some things in there. But when you're building a website or you have somebody who's managing your website, you're doing a redesign, especially with larger sites, you just want to make sure that the canonical URLs are clear to people, but especially clear to Google, right? So a lot of times in larger sites, especially e-commerce, you might have multiple pages that are showing very similar content. You don't want that content to be competing against itself in the search engines. So a good example of this would be in an e-commerce world. You have product pages, you have product categories. Sometimes the product category page is showing the same content that shows on the product pages itself. And so you would usually go into a site like that and make sure that you set the canonical pages, the preferred URLs. This is more technical, but I do think, especially if you have a larger website, this is something you want to think about and make sure that you've kind of identified these in the code so that Google knows which page is the most important page about the topic. So if you have multiple pages about the same keyword topic, you can identify one that is kind of the key focus, right? And so you want to do that so that Google is clear. It also allows Google to more quickly index your site. This also can happen on larger blogs. So you might have blogs and then the blogs are in categories. When you click onto a category page, you're seeing all these blog posts, and it's the same thing that you'd see if you clicked on the blog posts themselves. You might have blog posts that are in multiple categories. So some categories are displaying the same exact content. And so you can really say, hey, here's the most important pages we need you to index and show up. And that can make things more efficient. Schema is also a coding piece that you can talk to your designer or developer about. They may need to get an SEO specialist in to do things like this. I find this to be most important if you are a physical brick and mortar business and you have an address. It can also be really useful if your company is doing very well on Google reviews and you'd like to have your Google reviews displaying in your search results. If you are product-based, this might be something you'd investigate. But this allows you to add some code that adjusts how your results in Google look. And there's lots of different categories. The three I mentioned are the ones I've had the most success with. You could dig into a lot of the others if you were an author, if you were doing a movie. There's different things that you can add to your code that'll help your actual results in Google display certain pieces of information. So you can think about that as well. Again, those are a little bit more advanced, but I think if you have a site that meets any of the criteria I mentioned, it would be worthwhile. I've also put in some great usability testing tools that you can check out. I know here at JB Media, we've been a big fan of Hotjar. It actually has a free version where you can at least test your homepage, but it'll give you click tracking and heat mapping to kind of show you, again, whether or not people are looking at the right things on your website. So in the last 5 minutes here, again, you're going to be able to dig more into this presentation with details. But one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about was SEO kind of as a service and how it's expanded into a lot of other things. So I've put a lot of tips in here for partnership marketing, for social media, for public relations, for link building. But I think what I want you to walk away with understanding is that search engine optimization is no longer keyword research and writing content. And it wasn't ever just that. It was always building links back to your website, right? So, there was always sort of a split. You wanted to do good keyword research, you wanted to write great keyword content and optimize your pages, and then you wanted to get links from other websites pointing back to your website to prove that your website was authoritative. That stuff is now, I think, evolved into a much bigger world of what I would call content marketing. So as you dig through these specific suggestions that I've given you in this downloadable slides, you'll see a lot of these kind of have to do with how do you make sure that you have great links pointing to your website. You can do that through PR. You can do that through local SEO. You can do that through building a great YouTube channel. All of these things slowly over time help you build what I consider to be a comprehensive and authoritative presence on the internet. And so this is where I think, SEO has really shifted. We're at this point now where it's not about just having a website with a lot of keywords and some links. It's about really building a whole online presence so that your website is the center of it, but there's all these other things out on the internet that are pointing back to your website that validate it, right? So even social media, which Google would say doesn't have a direct correlation, or direct kind of effect on your website. Basically, it's something that they can see happening. So when you have a lot of social media traffic coming to your website, Google can see that. And if those people are coming from social media and staying on your website for a long time, they are proving that your website is worthwhile to look at. So even though they'll say there's no direct connection between social media and SEO and rankings, they do have this sort of relationship where you show the search engine that you have authority online through your social media presence. So this is something that we all just have to be thinking about, that SEO is no longer, like I said, this thing that you hire somebody to do. When you hire somebody to do SEO, I think you're hiring somebody to do content marketing. And you're asking them to look at your whole online presence, and you're asking them to help you find the opportunities that you have to do better, whether that's getting local listings, whether that's getting PR coverage in your local publications, or even national ones, whether that's building your social media presence so that more people are being driven to the website, whether that's diversifying your content so it's more than just text and it includes other things. So Justin, I just want you to talk really quick in the last few minutes about basically just JB Media Group. And I know you guys have basically had to make this shift
right
from offering SEO as this one sort of department to realizing that actually it's a whole process that everybody gets involved in.
Yeah, and I would argue that even from the very beginning, we took a more content-centric approach to SEO than some competitors we had. And I think what has happened over the last few years is that the industry has caught up with that, and it's gotten more complicated. We still sell some SEO work that is technical on-site optimization of existing content and metadata as a service, which is a little bit more in line with what people used to call SEOing a website. But we will temper the expectations of what that will do, and usually say this is just to build a strong foundation for future content marketing, which may or may not be keyword focused. So to clarify that, we have some clients where we do tons of content writing, but SEO is not part of the strategy. And the content is used for mostly email marketing, and also so that when people come to the website because they're aware of this event, they will have great content to read and be informed. But we're not expecting organic search engine traffic to generate from those articles. We have a client like that where they're like, why aren't we building a larger audience? And I mean, to be like really honest with them, it's partially because our entire content strategy is one of sales and customer education and not attracting new customers, which is more of an inbound and more of an SEO focus. We do have campaigns to get more email addresses, and then we use the email to inform them about the industry and then try to get them to buy a conference ticket because it's the best conference in the industry. But we don't have industry educational articles that are focused on keywords. We have other clients where the blogging is like 80% focused on SEO. And then there's some in between where it's like, we need articles that can be shared as ads on YouTube or ads on LinkedIn, but we also want that page someday to rank for this keyword. And so let's have a page that can do both. Or a strategy where some of the content is more focused on optimizing while others is more focused on social or email. So that's why it's integrated. Because a blog that's like really focused for email can also be, a long-term SEO play as well. Yeah. So we have people in our company who are educated across these various topics, and so we can inform a content strategy that serves all the channels.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that really kind of just wraps up that exact kind of, like I said, perception and how we've had to change things. So when you're saying, I want to do SEO, I want to optimize my website, I want you to really think about how what you are actually talking about is doing a number of different things to improve the authority of your company online. And so you might have to sit with somebody first, and I know Justin's team does this, to really kind of figure out what opportunities are going to make the most sense for your type of business. So there's no, again, sort of one size fits all answer. I think you end up, I know you guys do a lot of onboarding with clients and like assessing what's going on with their website first so that you can make good decisions about where to spend your time and energy. And so that's something I just want you all to think about, that there's no kind of like simple way to do it. You really want to think about how you can figure out where you're at online with all these different aspects of what I've outlined in this this downloadable slide piece, and think about where are you already gaining traction, where do you feel the most comfortable spending your time and energy. Think about how you can focus on those things, because you may not be able to do it all right away. Lastly, I have put in a list of just different pieces of data I think everybody should be looking at for SEO, especially if you're using Google Analytics. Again, search engine optimization success is more than just whether or not you're ranking number one on Google. As a matter of fact, number one is kind of an arbitrary thing these days. So you really want to look at organic search traffic. You want to look at the pages of your website. Which pages of your website are getting the most organic search traffic? Which pages of your website are keeping people on your site the longest? Those pages have more potential. If you're using Google Analytics, you can set up goals and track conversions. So are people buying products? Are they downloading your ebooks? Are they signing up for something with a form? You can track all of that. You can still use Google Search Console to track rankings, as well as, like I said, sites like Ahrefs or Moz or SEMrush. You can also look at referral traffic. So if you're building links to your website, I would hope that as those links increase, you're getting more traffic from those links. They're not just pointing at your website, they're actually getting people to click through. And then from a usability perspective, looking at how long people stay on your site on average. So do they stay for 2 minutes or 1 minute or 5 minutes? And also how many pages do they look at? Those things give you a baseline of basically how people are able to navigate the site, how easy it is for them. Are they just hitting one page and leaving? Is that what you wanted them to do? Or are they hitting a page and easily figuring out how to take the next step? So you can dig into that more. So I know we're a few minutes past the top of the hour, so if anybody has questions, please feel free to chat them in. We will be sending you a recording of this conversation, as well as a link to download all of these slides. I just want to let everybody know we do have some cool things coming up. First, our next cohort starts October 8th. So if you're interested in learning more about this and digging into SEO, you can join us for that. We also have an Introduction to Content Marketing course that's available if you want to check that out as well. That would help you do things like keyword research and work through that type of stuff.
Yeah, we should talk about that real quick, because the class we have our last online class of the year starts next week.
Yes,
and you can join anytime between now and the end of next week, and we won't have another general online class running until February, because our January class will be focused on tourism and local marketing, which only is relevant to a small sector of our current students who are on the call. Yeah. So this is the last chance to join our 12-week program until next February. We hope to have a really large class. We already have 4 or 5 students signed up. We hope to double that number in the next week. So if you're interested, reach out to us. We have some small discounts available for people. So please contact Jenna, and that's Jenna at jbmediagroup.llc.com, or Sarah or I if you want information. But we'd love to have you guys join. It's the last chance to learn this year.
Awesome, and thanks for sharing your email, Jenna, and thanks for reminding me of that, Justin. I appreciate it. And so, Maui, I see your question here. As a relatively new blogger, what would you say should be your biggest SEO area of focus? So, I'm just curious, are you writing your own blog, or are you ghost blogging for other people? And Natalie, I see your question as well. We'll get to that in just a second. Yeah, so you've got your own blog. So, I think the first, thing that you're going to want to work on if you're starting a new blog is really thinking about what Justin brought up, which is, so what is the purpose of the blog? Are you going to have keyword content that you want to rank, and also just content that you want to be sharing on social media and things like that? Because I imagine as a blogger, you're going to have content that serves both sides of that coin.
Yeah.
And I think the first step is really spending time on keyword research, and not just researching keywords, but also really thinking about what we talked about, which is the intent. So if you're going to attract people to your website, what is the purpose of attracting them? What do you think their intentions are, so that you can really develop content, keyword or otherwise, that really kind of serves their purpose?
Yeah, and I see your follow-up. I would say it's really important.
Well, and that's
two different people.
So
I'm seeing those different people asking questions. I would say pick your 4 to 5 most important topics you want to get known for and build authority for, and make sure you're blogging about each one a couple times a month, which is a lot of content, but it's necessary. And then if you're dealing with affiliate marketing, my recommendation is to not really worry about it for the first 90 days to 6 months. Because you got to build an audience first. You got to build an audience to trust you before they're going to click on your links. And if the first thing people find is a promotion for something else, rather than being educated and informed and entertained, they're probably not going to become a really loyal follower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And Kristen, so I don't know if you were kind of also talking about the same blog Maui was talking about, or if you had a question about affiliate marketing and blogging. Just clarify that. And Natalie, when it comes to setting the canonical pages in Google, do you know if there's a WordPress plugin? I feel like there is.
There has to be. Yeah,
I was going to say, there would be a WordPress plugin for doing that, and you may need to look at the theme that you have and the other plugins you're using and make sure that you can adjust that. I can't remember if they allow you to do that inside of Yoast. You might want to check the Yoast SEO plugin first. Also inside of Google Search Console, you can just identify whether or not you want the www or not www version to be the main version. I also suggest doing that just as a side note. But yeah, I would just go into plugins, add new, and put in, canonical URLs. And there should be a few different options. You might just need to test them till you find one that'll work well with your WordPress system. And Kristen, I see you're looking for an entry-level way to get into content marketing. You believe you have a unique platform, but you're not sure how to execute it. So I'm not trying to continue to ask questions, but so if you're trying to basically maybe get hired as a freelance writer doing content marketing, am I understanding that? And when you say a unique platform, I'm not sure what you mean. So do you have a unique piece of software that you're using to do this kind of stuff, or do you mean you have a unique voice kind of in the world? I'm just curious what you mean by unique platform when it comes to the content marketing piece. Yeah, so Kristen, so you're basically saying that you have kind of a unique perspective that you'll be sharing in your content. Am I following that correctly? All right, cool. And while you're typing that in, I just have this one question is, if you recommend www or non-www for preferred URLs, do you think it matters?
Really slight preference for non, because it's a shorter URL, but it doesn't really matter. You just have to pick one and then use the tools to make sure it's consistent. But I have to step away. I actually had a call.
No, go for it. I'll finish up with Kristen here.
Thank you.
But yeah, viewer 46. I hope that made sense. It really is up to you. I would agree with Justin. Sometimes I prefer the non-www because it's shorter. But there's really, one is not better than the other. It's just a matter of being consistent. Okay, great. And actually, Kristen, I will go ahead and give you my email as well, because we can definitely continue this conversation just about getting into, content marketing in general as a writer. Like I said, I think I'm just trying to understand, here's the questions I would want you to think about. When you're trying to establish yourself as a writer or as a content marketer, and you're expecting, I would assume, like I said, for either companies to hire you or for companies to hire you as a freelancer to participate in some way in their blogging. I think the key questions are who do you think these audiences are? Who do you think you should be approaching because they would want your unique perspective? Are there already sites out there that you think would need help writing about the topics that you have expertise in? That's really what I did in the beginning, was I identified my niches as a writer. So for instance, I was working in corporate healthcare. So corporate healthcare led me into my first clients really being healthcare focused. Especially because at the time, the HIPAA laws were coming out, and I was knowledgeable about HIPAA, which was an important sort of specialty to have in the healthcare field. So, that's kind of the first place I would start, is when it comes to the type of content you want to create for people, who is really going to be the lowest hanging fruit for that. And then I think too, just building up your own reputation. Maybe, I don't know if you're already writing your own blog or if you're already writing for somebody about these topics, but really having a good portfolio of samples together that will make it easy for people to see what you're capable of doing, and all of that stuff I think will be really valuable. But I will definitely follow up with an email, and feel free to email me back as well, and we can talk more about this. All right, so thank you all so much for staying on a little longer. Again, if there's any other questions, I'm glad to answer them, but I want to make sure everybody can get back to their day. So again, if you're interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to Jenna or myself, and we can give you information about our last cohort for 2018. And we will, of course, have another digital drop-in the first Wednesday of November. So we hope to connect with all of you again then. Have a great day.